UForce. UForce. Nothing but you, and the game.
With the UForce power field, nothing comes between you and the game.
UForce.
Hello and welcome to another dip into the under-chlorinated pool of video game history with ReplayRetro. I'm Matt, and on today's show we're taking a look at a controller that offered gamers the chance to feel like a Jedi, using the Force to play their games without ever touching a control pad, as we examine the UForce Power Field controller from Broderbund. Regular viewers of the show will know that I love reviewing the underdogs, those systems and accessories that receive nothing but criticism and abuse from bloggers, reviewers and YouTubers alike, to find out if they really are as bad as everyone makes out, or if it's simply just a case of it being cool to hate something, and that opinion being taken as fact by the audience. And when it comes to criticised controllers for Nintendo's first Western marketed console, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the UForce is second only to the infamous Power Glove, which seemed to work just fine when I reviewed it back in Season 4. So maybe it's time the UForce got a chance to set the record straight too. Broderbund was founded in 1980 by brothers Doug and Gary Carlston as a means to market and sell Galactic Empire, a game devised by Doug in 1979. This successful publisher can be credited with launching the Prince of Persia franchise, as well as producing other famous games like Karateka and the multi-platform smash hit puzzle game Myst. They were also well known for their educational software, including the Mavis Beacon series. So it's clear this company knew what they were doing when it came to the software industry, but they were yet to show any interest in the hardware side of the business until in 1989, when they released their Nintendo-licensed UForce controller for around $70. Just as with the slew of motion game controllers that would go on to appear over the years, the UForce was marketed as a device to make games more realistic by immersing the player in the game without the controller getting in the way. The advertising boldly claiming it knows your every move before you make it. But how exactly did this technology work? Well, it may look similar to a theremin when in use, which no doubt added to its appeal amongst sci-fi geeks, but while a theremin uses clever radio frequency oscillation, the UForce actually uses infrared sensor panels, which detect the motion, velocity and relative position of the player's hands, converting this input into controller outputs, which the console can then respond to accordingly. This actually provides a surprising increase in accuracy over the standard controller, as the speed and force of a player's movements could be interpreted on a sliding scale rather than the simple on or off functionality of a button on a control pad. And while the console itself wouldn't know what to do with this extra information, the UForce could at least in theory assign a different turbo speed to the control outputs based on that speed or force data. So for example, you could program a boxing game specifically for use with the UForce, which would be able to use the speed of your movements to determine the impact force of your punch, similar to the way in which the mechanical game track controllers would allow video game golfers to control their swing a decade later. As a result of this enhanced range of control possibilities, Broderbund did plan a series of UForce specific games to complement their new accessory. However, the controller is also compatible with pretty much the entire NES library, though it will work better with some games than others, just like any specialist controller. After all, you wouldn't have much luck playing Mega Man with a racing wheel. To make this possible, there are 4 dip switches which adjust what the player's movements are translated into, and the manual includes a list of popular titles and the best settings to use with them. Where your game isn't listed, the manual advises the user to select the settings for a similar style of game, which tends to work pretty well in my experience. The UForce can be laid down flat or with the back panel raised at a 90-degree angle, and again this depends on the requirements of the game being played. A power bar and flight stick are also included for use with certain titles. So, now you know how it works, let's take a look at the controller itself and find out just how well it works on a selection of games. Looking at the box, first of all, you can see that this is an officially licensed Nintendo product from these two logos here. So while it was, of course, manufactured by Broderbund, this isn't one of those items that was done without Nintendo's permission. Nintendo were very much aware of this. You know, clearly they approved it and they thought it worked well enough to get their seal of quality on it. And you have to remember that in this era, that Nintendo seal of quality, it did still kind of mean something. I mean, there was some shovelware games and things about, but for an accessory, it would mean something. So that's a reassuring thing when parents are looking to buy it. On the other subject of buying it, you touch nothing, yet it knows your every move. That tagline would have really got my attention. Less so the knitted jumper of this gentleman here, but again, his hands, look how fast they're moving. The camera physically could not capture his hands. That is impressive. Not entirely sure what he's playing there. Could maybe be Top Gun, possibly. Maybe. Who knows? The sides of the box don't really have a lot on them. On the back, you get that Nintendo seal of quality again, and some blurb about how this is a new dimension in video game excitement, an amazing UForce controller, simply the most realistic, most responsive, a breakthrough technology. Wow, that again, that would have really got my attention. The UForce is the only controller you'll ever need. Another bold statement there. Wow. They do mention here that it's not compatible with Zapper, Light Gun or Power Pad games. That's understandable. I assume it would kind of work with Power Pad stuff. But yeah, the Light Gun games it's not going to work with, which is probably why on the front here it does say works with virtually all Nintendo games, because obviously things like Duck Hunt, it ain't going to be a lot of use for. Understandably. You can see, again, works with virtually all Nintendo titles. Complete, ready to use, comfortable, responsive, T-bar handle and accessory set included, compact, portable and easy to set up. As long as you follow the instructions, of course. Excellent. Taking a look at the item itself, it is nice and compact, as mentioned on the box. You get a decent amount of cable here. We all know that it sucks when you buy a controller and it doesn't come with much cable. Of course, you've got the NES controller standard port fitting there. Underneath, not a lot, the usual embossed logos and information. Patent information, as you would expect, some nice rubber feet to hold it in place. Just as I open it up here, you can see that there are two sensors on the edge here. So that's two of its detection points. If you wave past those, it can detect you. Once opened, you can see that you have the select and start buttons here. So they're assigned to physical buttons so that it's easier to use them, obviously. You have the dip switches to allow you to set the UForce up for your specific game. And of course, these turbo switches here so that you can turbo the A and the B buttons for use in games that benefit from that. When it's laid down, you can see the full detection surface. You have these 8 pads here. And also there is some detection in the main bed of the sensor pad. You can see that these are N's and U's on the actual product, whereas on the box they're more like little targets, so I'm assuming this is either a prototype or an artist's pre-rendering of what it may look like. You can see the turbo buttons are also actually red, as opposed to the finalised black on there. The detection, as you can see, there are more buttons essentially on here than on a standard pad, which is what would enable the UForce specific games to have more controllability to them. It also is able to detect speed and movement, where obviously a pad can't. For example, if I was using a control pad and pressing a button, like the select button here, I'm either pressing it or I'm not. That is on or it's off, depending on what I'm doing. Whereas using these detection pads, it can detect that I'm over it. However, it can detect how far away from it I am, and most importantly, it can detect how fast my hand is moving. So I can be moving horizontally from one button to another, or I could be moving on the vertical plane, up and down as such. Not only that, but it can also detect the speed that I'm doing that at. So for example, I could be moving fairly slowly, maybe that might be for maneuvering a lander maybe onto a planet's surface, or I could be moving really, really rapidly to hit something like that. And again, that can be detected on the horizontal plane as well, which does allow for far more controllability using that sliding scale as opposed to the more digital on-off method. And it would have meant that, you know, certain games could have had a lot more controllability based on it using combination moves or it activating certain turbo outputs depending on the speed. So you are basically using the UForce to create more buttons than would have been available on a standard pad by combining buttons or combining turbos to make other moves that wouldn't be possible on the pad. You can of course also use it in an upright fashion, which changes the dynamics of the infrared beams and obviously changes the way it detects your movements. Further ways to modify how it detects you include the power bar here for use with Mike Tyson's Punch-Out and future games, which sits in the front there and obviously manipulates the way the beams come up from the sensor pads and changes the way it detects your movement. Obviously for Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, you would be punching at the screen like that, and that would be another great moment where that speed could be usable, because let's face it, in a boxing match, speed kind of is going to have an impact on how hard you're hitting someone. So if I'm going like this, well, I'm not really hitting Mike Tyson very hard, whereas if I'm going like that, I'm probably hitting him fairly hard, though not as hard as he would hit me. Taking the power bar away, you can see you also have this other accessory. This is the grips, the T-bar grips, and you'll notice you have two buttons on top, probably for firing your weapons while you're flying. And if I turn it upside down, you'll notice that when I press those buttons, there is a reflective pad that flips down, and that's obviously how it detects that you've pressed those buttons. So if I lock that in there, you can see that when I press that button, I would be changing the way the infrared is reflected. So right now it knows there is something there, but then when I press that, it knows that something is beaming the infrared signal back. And that just adds even more layers of controllability to what the UForce can do. It really is quite impressive just how much more control options this offers compared to the standard controller. So with that in mind, let's take a look at how it actually works when playing games. The first game we'll try is the instantly recognisable Super Mario Bros, which I'm sure you all know well enough to be able to tell if it's the UForce holding me back or my own complete lack of gaming ability, as is more often the case. We'll go back to the title screen and we'll press start and we'll get straight into it. You can see that the left panel here controls my left and right movement, while the right panel is responsible for running and jumping. And the only thing I do find quite awkward about this layout is it makes it easier to run all the time. But obviously that means you're more likely to run head first into a Goomba like that. Maybe if I keep my hand over this side, it will be easier for me to control. Let's have a look at that. Might screw it up slightly less. Not even bothered about picking out a Goomba. Yeah, I am now though. That ability to accidentally end up running can be a problem. So you can see that it would be easier with a control pad, but in all fairness, this would add a new level of difficulty to the game. If you were really used to Mario, well, let's make it a bit more interesting. Oh, come on. And obviously, as a result, make the game last longer. Nothing wrong with that. Let's give it another quick go. So all of a sudden, all those old games on your shelf take on a new life as you run headfirst into a Goomba, because it does make them far more difficult and add that whole new level of gameplay, which is a great thing. And again, we're proving here already, straight away on the first game, and a game that, let's face it, everyone had for their Nintendo Entertainment System, that it does work. No, the UForce does work well. This is so hard while talking on camera. I'd really like to complete this level. I would feel like I'd achieved something with my life, but let's face it, it's not going to happen. So let's move on to another game. Next up then, we're going to take a look at a game that requires the UForce to be set up in its upright position like this. And this is actually one of the games that was designed specifically for the UForce. This is off a leaked ROM from the internet. And it's pretty much the only one of the mini-games that I've been able to figure out. Well, I say figure it out, you'll see in a moment I haven't. But yeah, let's play Nuclear Rat Attack! So you can see the rats pop out of little holes, and you have to punch them back into the hole. The only thing is, sometimes, like there, the rats don't seem to appear visibly on the screen. You can see a little flicker appears, and you get points for punching said flicker, but they don't appear. I don't know if this is a bug or... Because obviously with this being a leaked version, it could be a bug. But actually, this works pretty well, other than, you know, that huge graphic glitch. And yeah, I mean, what more is there to say? You're basically punching giant nuclear rats. I assume this is someone's job at the nuclear power plant, is to punch all the mutant rats that come out of the cooling pipes and eventually fail, leading to the Sci-Fi Network making a film about said nuclear rats taking over the universe. Or at least LA, I imagine. That's Nuclear Rat Attack. While we're not on a roll at all, we'll take a look at another one of those mini-games off the Power Games cartridge. We'll look at Hose 'em Down. In this game, you are a fireman, and it actually shows off a bit of the controllability. For example, over here, you can see the higher I am away, I'm in control of the hose, and I actually somehow use the hose to carry someone out of the building. But where this game comes unstuck is that from what I can work out, to move to the other windows, you have to lightly tap this thing here. Oh no, wait, it's the distance. So actually, this game... Oh, sorry about the fall, but at least you're not on fire. This game actually works very interestingly, because this would be impossible with a control pad, because this is all about power. So you can see the further I am from this thing on the left controls which window I'm at. So if I'm really close, I'm all the way over there. If I'm really far away, I'm all the way over here. And obviously how close I am to this corner here where my right hand is controls the hose. Oh, so I can carry this person down to the ground. I can get this person. Look at that! Oh, it's really awkward, but it does kind of work. Oh, look at this. I'm functional at this game. I mean, I'm a terrible firefighter. But people are getting rescued fairly well here. This is actually going far better than it's gone on any of my attempts. Oh, it says that as everyone bursts into flames. That's awkward. Yeah, I'm coming to get you, mate. Don't worry. Oh, bugger. Yeah, let's get you. I don't know how comfortable it would be to be carried out of the building by a hose, but I mean, I suppose it would save on the expense of ladders. You know, ladders aren't cheap. I had to buy a new ladder a little while ago. They're not cheap. Really not. I mean, I suppose, though, people suing you for being carried down by a stream of water, that would be expensive. But come on, like, being like, I've lost the controls completely. I've lost the control. I can't get up there. That's weird. So I can getting up to the top. Why are you not there? You go. Sorry. Let's get you out. I'm getting you out. Getting you out. I'm evacuating you from the building. Oh, sorry, dude. You burned to death. How many people are in this building? This is ludicrous at this point. I've lost it. I have lost. Why? Interesting. Is there no other? Oh, my hose has got leaks in it. That can't be. Oh, my hose has got leaks, and that must be why I can't get up past this floor anymore. What caused the leaks? Did anyone see what caused the leaks? That's interesting. As the hose started leaking, I was losing pressure and couldn't get up to the top floors. That's really interesting. I quite like that game. For one last game that everyone knows, I thought I would give the NES version of PacMan a try, and you'll see that the UForce is set up with the T-grips installed. Now, you're supposed to be able to play PacMan by just holding your hands in roughly the position of the T-grips, but for the life of me, I cannot get that to work. And in the manual, it does say, if you can't get it to work, try it with the T-grips. So that's what we're going to do now, kids. We're going to try it with the T-grips. So we'll press start, start again, and let's do really badly at PacMan. Okay, everything seems to work. Now it's worth pointing out that the connector that the T-grips go into does not have any wiring, so it's not like it's cheating and using that. No! Yes! It's not like it's cheating and using that. And in fact, actually, the handle does come out very, very easily. Oh god. I think we can safely say we're struggling with this one. Though again, it does appear to be playable, much more difficult than it would be, of course, with the standard control pad. Don't get eaten by a goat. No, nah. Yeah, much more difficult than it would be with a standard control pad, but it's playable, and if you're really good at PacMan, well, this is a way to test your abilities. No, no, go down. This is definitely a way to test your abilities, if nothing else. It does work. I can't argue with that fact. So I mean, if we've learned anything, it's that the UForce works with some stuff better than it works with other stuff, but it does work. And it's a pity we didn't get to see more of those UForce specific games, really, because in all fairness, it seems to work pretty well with those. And that's PacMan. Around the same time as the UForce hit shelves, PAX released the Power Glove, which would be brought to the West by Mattel. This rival motion controller used ultrasonic technology along with conductive ink flex sensors to provide another unique way to play games. And the NES was never short of interesting controllers, such as the Miracle Piano and the Laserscope. But none of these really managed to capture the market and become big sellers. This included the UForce, and due to these low sales, the controller-specific games would never see a release. Though fortunately, a ROM is now available for download, allowing owners of this interesting controller the chance to play a series of mini-games designed specifically for it. In 1998, after a string of acquisitions, mergers and takeover bids, Broderbund was no more. However, the brand name is still used for some educational software franchises. So does the UForce deserve all the criticism it gets? Well, no. Not really. It seems to me that just like the Power Glove, the majority of negative reviews are from people who didn't read the instructions, and so weren't using it right, often having the settings totally wrong for the game they're playing, and so naturally the UForce doesn't respond correctly to their movements. When set up properly, it seems to work pretty well, and while a standard control pad is definitely easier, the UForce can be used well by those who use it right, such as one Joe McKenna, whose YouTube videos have proved its worth in a number of games, even using emulation to control Super Mario 64 with it, proving beyond any doubt that the UForce really doesn't deserve its place on so many worst controller ever lists, and reminding us that you shouldn't always believe everything you see on the internet. Including this. That's all we've got time for on today's show, but don't forget to keep in touch via Twitter or our Facebook page, and if you want to support the channel then check out our Patreon campaign at the link in the description. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.